Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Goffstown Board of Selectmen's meeting. It's Monday, October 31st, Halloween, and we're all in our costumes. So, with that, the first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. We all rise. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the acceptance of the correction of the 10/17/2011 minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any corrections or any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Next item is announcements. We have a few announcements. The first announcement that I think everybody that's here is for regarding trick or treat, which has been postponed, and it was scheduled for today from 6 to 8, and it'll be rescheduled. An announcement will be made in the future, probably right after this meeting, or in a little while after we have a discussion up. It's just so that everybody's aware, because it's scheduled to start at 6 this evening. It's canceled due to the weather and safety conditions in conjunction with also the surrounding communities. If we were the only one to have it, I'm sure everybody from the surrounding towns will be here, and our sidewalks and our roads wouldn't be able to handle the volume, and the last thing we need is any unfortunate mishaps. With that, I believe
Yes,
Public Works announcement.
I have an announcement concerning the drawdown on the lake level of Kelly Falls Dam, Glen Lake, and also Nemaski Lake. The Department of Public Works is aware that those two lakes, Glen Lake, Nemaski Lake, have been temporarily lowered while crews repair broken flashboards on the dam. It would be prudent for residents to take opportunity to remove floating docks from the water if needed. These boards will be replaced in another 2 days, November 2nd, and the water level is expected to go back to the higher level that evening, Wednesday evening. And on a related subject, it would also be a convenient time for residents in the low-lying areas of Lynchville and Danish Park Road to have contractors complete water service hookups. Several residents are doing that under receiving offsetting funds from a STAG grant for water service hookups, and the availability of that grant to residents has been extended until October 31st, 2012.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just have a couple of, just to reiterate, for those of you who do not subscribe to Nixle, it is a way for the community to send text messages via your telephone or the internet to let you know about any pending emergencies or situations, and this was a good example this past weekend. So if you have not signed up, it's Nixle, NIXLE.com, and you can sign up to get those messages from the police department, from emergency management. So I urge citizens to subscribe to that. There were a couple of messages that went out over the weekend, and one of them that is still open. That's a shelter. Is at Manchester Memorial High School. So I'm sure Nick will mention that. But I just want to say thank you to to our Department of Public Works, who did once again a great job removing the snow and clearing trees, etc., over the weekend and into today, and also our police department, who was running around the clock. Same thing with our fire department, both our call personnel and our full-time guys. There were many calls for service that went out, whether it be trees that were on power lines that were sparking, and there was ambulance calls. Ambulance, I heard, got trapped in between power lines, and they had to call PSNH to kind of get them out. So it was a pretty hairy experience Saturday night going into Sunday. So Another great job by our Department of Public Works and police and fire departments. Interestingly enough, today at lunch, oftentimes we get a letter from a resident who's complimentary of the service. And while I was at Pizza Market this afternoon, Officer Tom Hammond was assisting these two ladies there, spent quite a few minutes with them explaining things, and as they left, they demanded to speak to his supervisor, and they called, like, right there from Pizza Market, talked to Lieutenant Pierre Pouliot, and, you know, complimented Tom for and I heard it firsthand, and it was another great job of professionalism by Tom, and I know, you know, we all know we've got a great public safety department here, police and fire, but it was great to see it, like, you know, right in action.
Firsthand.
And to see somebody so pleased that they felt compelled to call up and compliment to compliment him and call a supervisor. So the other thing I wanted to say is, and it should go without saying, but so many neighbors are helping neighbors, whether that be, I saw a lot in my neighborhood, people with chainsaws helping people get their driveways cleared, and you know, I know there are many people that are kind of hooking people up with shelter and staying in different homes. So continue to do that, and I'm sure we'll get an update from Sue or Nick on the power situation, but it could be right a couple of days. So any help from neighbors helping neighbors would be a good thing.
Okay, thank you. You had a,
Just on the shelter, I know there's over 60% of the Goffstown residents without power tonight, but if there's anyone with power that is viewing this evening, if you know of any friends, neighbors, anyone in the community that needs shelter, has shelter needs, there is a community shelter set up in Manchester. Manchester Memorial High School is set up. Our Goffstown CERT team, the Community Emergency Response Team, is assisting and manning that. They've lent a helping hand, and they've provided shelter managers for us. There are hot meals being prepared, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if it's a temporary warming period that you need, if you just need to stop in for a hot meal, by all means, it's on 1 Crusader Way, and it's Memorial High School, and it is open and will remain open as long as there's a need.
thank you.
Do we have the number of the police department off top of, I may have it on my.
4858.
Okay, so call
497.
497-48.
4858.
4858 if you have any questions, if you need assistance with that.
And if I could, that shelter is pet-friendly, so if anyone has pets that reluctant to leave because of pets, they can bring their pets with them, and it is also, it will accommodate any individual with special needs.
Do they require to be leashed?
Yes, there are crates, so the dog or cat will be crated once in a segregated room. But yes, they should bring the needs, their leashes, anything special for the pets, they should bring that with them.
Okay, great. Sue, did you have any?
The only updated numbers I have is 4,364 are still out of power in Goffstown, and that number came in just before this meeting.
Okay.
So what
At
percentage,
peak-
what percentage is
At
that?
peak, we were, I'm not sure, but at peak, we were at 65%, and that was like 4,700, I think, or in Goffstown, we're out.
And similar to the ice storm, they are prioritizing by substations, transmission lines first to try to impact the greatest area, then they're working their way down to smaller lines. So if it's just your line from the pole to the house, that would probably be the lowest priority and one of the last things to be reconnected.
And I know people often ask about school, and I drove by Lauren Lane and Tibbetts Hill, and there is a power line that literally is down, two poles, I think, went down on the school property, and as of 3:30, 4 o'clock, there was nobody there.
I do not expect school
I would
tomorrow.
highly doubt.
No,
well,
school
I'm
is
sure-
being canceled for tomorrow.
Yeah, I highly
Yeah.
doubt there'll be school tomorrow.
I did mention to our public service contact that all our 55 and older communities and, you know, the numbers that were in those communities, so they could pay
Do they have
attention to
power?
that. Medville does not have power.
Right, I know Medfield does not.
You do now?
Half.
Oh, half.
All of the half or just part of the half?
Part of, the whole half plus a portion of the west side.
Roy Apartments,
Does not have power.
I don't know, I gave her the names of all of them, Placid Woods, Roy,
Meeting House.
Meeting House, and Medville. And said if they could pay attention to those, that would be
I spoke to
appreciated.
Don Davidson over at St. A's, and he said that they don't have power either. And unfortunately, the line that distributes power to Sullivan Arena, that's down, so their ice is now, they had to take that down. So that's gonna be if there's any, there won't be any ice hockey, at least for the next 4 to 5 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the, if not the worst, one of the worst amounts of power outages.
Power outages, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the third largest. PSNH
Yeah.
district.
Yeah, it's not just New Hampshire.
Another
though.
10 days, all the leaves would have been off the trees.
Oh, I know.
I have an announcement from an email from a resident, but I want to conclude all the emergency response subjects first.
I think we are all concluded with the, okay.
Later this evening, we'll be reviewing the approval of a letter concerning zip code issues for the 4 courier routes in Bernardville. And it just so happens I had an email over the weekend from a resident on Larch Street, which is in Bernardville, and this couple recently purchased a home. Come to find out, we have a Manchester address, which is confusing. Do we live in Gulfstown or Manchester? Getting things delivered has been a problem due to our Manchester address. The biggest thing is our car insurance has gone up because of a Manchester address, even though we live in Gulfstown. I think this really needs to be addressed. And please address this issue with the rest of the selectmen. Duly done.
Okay, thank
Just
you.
a question, because I know we are addressing the zip code, but I'll ask our insurance experts. Is there, and you may or may not know, can you clarify that with your insurance agent? Say that even though it's a mailing address of Manchester, I actually live in Goffstown at different rates?
If you want,
You lived it.
I've lived this experience,
Mhm.
and what I had to do was, because I had called my agent and I explained about it, and they contacted the carrier, and I got a letter from the town clerk stating that I was a resident of Goffstown, and that I have a mailing address of Manchester, but the property that I lived in paid taxes to Goffstown, and subsequently, that's what it took. But it was not easy.
Right.
Well, thank you for that, and I'll pass it along to the resident who sent me this email.
In the short term, until we can address
Yeah.
the zip code.
I will say, though, that I do know that there are different rates.
Yes.
For Manchester versus
yeah.
Goffstown.
Oh, yeah, because on your collision and your
Yeah,
your
that's not
theft
just for
and-
auto, that's also for homeowners, so.
Oh, yeah, yeah, with that, so, with that, can we move on to public comment? With that, if there's any member of the public who would like to make a comment regarding an issue that's not on the agenda, or that they're here for the, later on in the evening, we'll take that at this point. If not, we'll move on to, we have a 4:45 appointment with Jack Morehouse regarding a grant for generator at Medville.
Jack he works for the emergency management
Yeah.
at the state. He is currently working in the EOC at the state. He is available by phone if we have any questions pertaining to this. And this is the same discussion that we had.
March 28th, 2011.
Exactly. And this is regarding an EMPG grant. It is a federal grant which is passed through the state, 50-50 match for an emergency generator for the clubhouse for Midville.
Okay, so, since Jack was the one who was on the agenda, is there somebody here that's gonna be speaking for Jack?
I can answer most of the questions. We do have him available, standing by phone, that he
Okay,
can, we have the
well-
phone here.
I guess my primary question is the when component. So the board agreed that we would be the pass-through, the town would be the pass-through for this grant. We would, but it was under the proviso that it would be a New Hampshire agency would be 50%, and then Medville would be paying the other 50%. That was my understanding. But
I believe
when-
the grant is in the amount of 5,900 and
Right.
change. The cost of the generator is more than that, so the grant would pay 5,900 plus, Medville would pay the balance.
Right.
And their in-kind match would be the work that's being performed, the trenching, the
Right.
cement pad, and that would meet the requirements for the grant.
And what is the, there was supposed to be, like, I guess, a memorandum of understanding from the Medville Cooperative with the Goffstown Police Department, and that it would be used as a potential shelter, right? If the need.
If Medville didn't need to use it.
Correct. That was my
Yes.
understanding.
Yeah, I don't know if that was clear, though.
I thought those were that was my recollection of this process, was that the town was gonna be the pass-through, but we would have the opportunity to, if in the case of it was needed as a shelter, the town would be able to do that.
One of the, I believe there are some residents from
They
Midville.
wanna come up.
We have some specific questions.
Okay.
I'm the president of the cooperative.
Right,
and
if
you'd like, I'd
if you
comment.
want,
Yeah,
if
come
you
on up,
want,
right.
just come up here and have a seat, just, we need your name for the record, and,
Sure. It's Kim Capen. I live at 15 Country Way in Medville Cooperative in Goffstown.
and your representative, your position.
My position is president of the cooperative.
Right, okay, just so that we have it for the record. Okay,
Good.
with that.
So, part of the discussion was, and the question was asked, is this emergency shelter going to be available for anyone else? And the initial thought was no, because if there's an emergency for us, it's really probably not even quite large enough if we had a real disaster. However, I mean, as part of this community of Goffstown, we don't have a need, and there's an emergency need for shelter. Obviously, we want to step forward and be a part of helping out. We have a facility that we can help out in. So it's not going to be often that's going to happen, but when it is, we certainly want to be, I mean, we're part of the community, so we obviously want to be helpful in the community. I mean, we have, you know, this emergency that we're faced with right now is pointing to us, or is pointing out to us, you know, the tremendous need that there is. I mean, this yesterday, no, actually this morning it was, we found one of our residents, and elderly residents in their late 70s, huddled on a sofa in one of our clubhouses because it was warmer than her home. We were able to get her to the other clubhouse where she had just gotten power. But, I mean, so there's empathy there that if there's a situation needed, you know, we're there.
And if I could add, one of the things that we had talked about in that discussion was not only looking at it as a use for a community shelter. We've opened up Memorial High School in the city, and we have the residents of Varney Apartments, they're without power, and the residents of Meeting House at Riverfront. If their power had been off and still was off, with an emergency generator, that's one population that, as emergency management, we wouldn't have to deal with. We know that they would be self-sufficient and have the ability to take care of themselves there. So it may not be appropriate for a large shelter for the community, but just having them have the ability to be self-sufficient is a very big benefit.
Yeah, there's roughly anywhere from 450 to 500 people at one time living in our community, so
Right. I
that's a
get-
burden that we can take care of.
And I think what's important is that if you are working with the emergency management here in Goffstown, and as you have basically two communities, you have the village of Glen Falls and you have Medford Farms, and it's very possible, like you stated earlier, that one half has power, the other half, or a portion of the other half doesn't. So it's very possible that there could be an emergency here in Goffstown, and you might have 3/4 of your power. 1/4 might be out, and obviously your shelter is gonna have a certain capacity. And working with emergency management, that would be determined, and that would be updated, working with them. So, whatever is available there. I guess what I'm trying to say is if your needs aren't that much at one time because you have power, and there might be parts of the other parts of the community that may not have power, then you would be able to function, people that are outside of your immediate community. So there is a benefit to the community all along. I mean, sometimes we have issues with a generator at Mountain View. Sometimes, in the past, it has been. You know, if we're trying to deal with other areas that have it, and we try to make the best within the community that we can to deal with it. Scott?
Yeah, so one of the things that, we learn a lot from these different storms, and we've had, unfortunately, too many of them over the last 5 or 6 years. But this past one, we had no power at any of our schools, with the exception, we think, of Bartlett, and Bartlett's never been used as a shelter. So, the fact that this could create an option is a good thing. It can't hurt us. So, but yeah, Mountain View didn't have any power. The high school didn't have any power. I'm talking Saturday night, Sunday. I think they got it last night, but it's very possible that this just gives you a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, redundancy in your plan.
Right. Nick?
One of the issues is the timeline for the grant. The grant application has to go before Governor and Council to be approved. Their next meeting is early December. Now, the storm kind of threw everything kind of up in an upheaval as far as what's on their agenda and what things will have to be tackled. But one of the hopes was getting the grant application, it's not even the application, it has been approved. The acceptance back to Governor and Council, or to the business office, so it can be on their December agenda versus the January agenda, which pushes us further into the winter. One of the things we did talk about was a memorandum of understanding for the upkeep, maintenance, and replacement of the generator, because it's technically property of the federal government placed in our stead, if you will. So if anything were to happen to it, legally we would be responsible for it. So we would be looking for a memorandum of understanding that basically says, I haven't seen that, so.
Oh, it does say Medville Cooperative will be responsible for maintenance and repair or any other cost to maintain the emergency generator in operational readiness, signed by the president and treasurer.
Okay.
And in fact, Jack had said that we could sign the acceptance and still condition it on receiving an MOU, but you're way ahead, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
one of
all
the things
that covered.
that we probably will do is do as much preparation now in anticipation, so that if we get the funds, say in January, the last emergency we had happen in February, so we'll try to cover for that, so.
What I'm saying is it possible, right, you said, like, to maybe do the pad, the
That's
concrete
what
pad,
I-
right, and do those, some of those soft things now?
Yeah, if we're pretty confident, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, if we're pretty confident that we've got everybody pulling for us and it's gonna happen, then we'll do the pad now. We
Right.
still don't have frost in the ground. We can do a pad
Right.
and make preparation for it because
way it's just a easy
we've already
hookup
set
and
those
done.
funds aside for that. So we can do that now, and then if we get it in January, we may have to shovel some snow off the pad, but we might be able to set the generator at that time.
Just an administrative question. So the town would receive the grant money? And was it your intent to pay their vendor? Who's going out for bid on this?
Yes, that was the question, is that the vendor would need to bill the town for the 5,900, and then the balance would have to be billed.
Yeah.
Does the
As soon as-
grantor require a bid process?
The grantor requires that the community follow its procurement code.
Okay, so we'll have to go, how much is this total?
We
Cost?
actually, we figured with all that we have to do, that our part of this is gonna be somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000, and that's what we appropriated. We appropriated $5,000 to cover that cost.
Do you have an estimate for the actual generator cost from a vendor?
You know, the person who has that answer is not here. I know that it went up substantially while we were going through this process. So, and we understand that, so obviously we're gonna have to absorb it, but,
Because I think what the town administrator was alluding to is that in order for the town to accept the money and then expend it,
Yep.
we would have to go through our procurement code, which would require, for that amount, would it be a bid?
Well,
Where's
that's
the
why I'm
cutoff?
wondering what the
5,000.
amount
It
is.
depends on the amount.
It's over 5,
Depends.
well, it depends upon, right, it could be 5 or 10.
the generator is.
What size
I
generator
think the,
is it? Probably is.
He mentioned it today.
You didn't mention a price
I
at
wanna
all?
say 30K. I think
I was
the
gonna say
generator
25,
piece
30,
itself
40.
is somewhere around $4,000.
You can give Jack a call if you,
Grant limitation, $5,971. Is that,
That's
is
all
it
we're-
50/50, or is this a?
it's a 50-50 match.
Okay, so if that's a grant limitation of just about 6,000, so the total cost is 12,000?
With all the trenching and the pad and I would.
And in kind,
And in
that
kind,
also
yeah.
includes in kind. But our only expenditure would be 59.
Yeah.
100, so that would be our limit,
What's
I would
our-
imagine.
That's true.
What is our purchasing?
Depends which department this comes under. If
Public
it's
Works.
admin, it's 5,000, Public Works, 20,000.
Sounds like it's a
I would
public
imagine
works
sounds like a
project.
public works
Public
project to
works.
You
me.
only
yeah.
have to get three bids, not bids, but 3 quotes.
Yeah, it does look like Public Works, because they
Yeah.
should be there, you know, at least to, an idea where the pad is going.
So
in
if
there.
you agree to
Initially, we
use
did
that.
get multiple quotes. And, you know, I apologize, I wasn't sure what I was gonna need here, and the person who did all of that work wasn't able to be here.
Oh, that's okay.
Fine.
We can
Now-
take those 3 quotes and I assume you chose low bidder.
Yes.
Are we going to have a public
Public
hearing
hearing?
for
Yes,
unanticipated?
accepted.
Accept and expend.
Yeah.
To accept and expend unanticipated revenues.
And that
Okay, so I think what
needs
we
to
need
be
to
rather
do,
quickly.
though, also for all the parties involved, we need to put some type of a timeline together, or at least a chronological order of what needs to happen, at what point in time, so everybody's on the same page.
When this comes back, will there be a breakdown for like the pad, the pad installation, the
Yeah, all of
junction
that, all
box?
of
I
that has
mean,
been projected.
I mean-
It's been detailed, and then obviously, in the end, you have to have a final, but
Because I'm saying, we're kind of sitting here with, I don't have any idea where this 12,000 or how the breakdown
Right.
is. I mean, that's kind of,
Yeah,
majority
well,
of it is obviously the
but I
generator.
mean, I was looking for something much more
Basically,
itemized.
I think what we're looking for and what's gonna be needed in there is a breakdown of it. I mean, you got, you know, obviously you got the pad, you're gonna have some trenching, you're gonna have some electrical work.
We do have all of that.
And, you know, assume this is propane, is this a propane
It's a
generator?
propane
So
generator.
then you're gonna have to, you know, you're gonna have, are you going off existing tanks, or this is gonna have its own tank?
Actually, we're upgrading the tank that we have to be a larger tank.
Okay, so just basically a breakdown is what,
And that's a requirement of the grant as well, so we could have Jack send us a copy of it, because they have to document the matching portion, all of those dollars and cents.
Yeah, all of that has been documented and sent to like you said, that's how the
right.
grant
So,
process
but we'll
works.
need that, plus we'll also need some type of a order, a chronological order, what happens, because we have to have a public hearing to accept and expend unanticipated money, so we need to be able to have that at an appropriate time. In other words, we don't wanna have all of this stuff coming in, gee, we need the money because we need to do this, and we haven't had the public hearing.
That's, that would occur when the
Grant comes through.
grant has been announced to the town
By the
for
governor
a
and council.
municipal agreement.
Well, we usually do it earlier, when you get the grant award, before you sign the paperwork for governor and council, because once they sign this, the check's on the way.
So it's
Yeah,
the,
this,
it's the release of the grant to go forward to the state.
Yes
Well,
and
that's-
no.
That's going to occur pretty soon.
Because I raised that question today with Jack, because I didn't know we had the MOU, and he said even though we sign this now, at any time, we can tell them to deobligate the
Oh,
the
okay.
grant.
Okay. And when does it go to government council, you said?
At the earliest would be the beginning of December.
Okay, so we can get our public hearing out of the way well before that?
Yes.
Okay.
okay.
And
Dave?
one comment, I've been involved with documenting in-kind donations and materials for a different grant situation from the state to the town. And I could not document work or labor that started before the governor and the council signed off on the grant. So I'm not sure if that restriction would apply to this grant, but it has applied to other grants managed by the state.
Well, that's gonna be one question for Jack, I guess.
And-
Definitely.
Because in the projects I'm thinking of, in many cases, we were ready to start working in April on a project, but the governor didn't release the money until July. So whatever we did in April was for nil, as
Okay.
far as an in-kind match.
I think that's a question for Jack,
Yeah.
and we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, although it's very, and different grants are different. It all depends on what's in there and what you're putting in the application. If you're putting, let's say, the pad and some stuff in there as the in-kind service, sometimes as long as it's listed and it's in the application, that it's acceptable, but we'll just need to make sure all the Ts are crossed and all the Is are dotted on this.
Makes sense, yeah. We'll get that clearance before we move forward, but
Okay.
Early December, it'll be a little tougher pouring a pad. We can, but maybe we should prepare the surface and then pour it then.
Now, do we have everything that we need, as far as, the application to be able to go forward with this, or are there any other questions?
The application was already submitted,
Right,
and I believe that was either through the police chief or fire chief.
right.
And it has been approved, so the documents that we have tonight are the acceptance, so that it can go to governor and council.
Okay, but we have all the information that we need. The members on the board have any other questions, or?
Now, I have just one quick
Go
question.
ahead.
You said there has to be a public hearing relative to you accepting and transferring. Does that have to happen before you accept it?
It usually
No.
does, but from what Selectman Capasano
Doesn't matter
said,
now.
it,
It's a moot.
since there's
No
an ability,
obligation.
right,
Right.
to withdraw, then
That doesn't
We can
matter.
call them
Okay.
and de-obligate the money.
No.
I see, the sooner we get this noticed, the better off.
Okay,
Everyone will be in planning and going forward.
okay. So I guess.
We're gonna
the-
proceed with the public hearing. We can do two things. We
It's
can,
motion, yeah,
we can,
to-
well, this,
to
that
sign
that could
and
be,
to-
right. I'll make that motion that, we sign off on, so we sign our approval for the grant and also schedule a public hearing within the next couple of weeks.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to accept this, forward it, and schedule a public hearing. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, thank you. Okay. The next item of business that we have is a acceptance of a donation, $100 donation to the Grassmere Town Hall Restoration Fund from Goffstown Babe Ruth Softball.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. And the next item is the town administrator's report, and she's on schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your weekly schedule is in your packets. For consensus folder tonight, you have AP warrants, employee status reports, the deposit voucher for the $100 to the Grassmere Town Hall Restoration Fund. Right to
You're welcome.
right to inter, Monica Gorman, Shirley Hill, Section 1, Lot 6B, and John Surratt, Section 3, Lot Extension 9, William Surratt, Shirley Hill, Section 3, Lot Extension 9A. A contract with Amoskeag Architectural Group and Town of Goffstown to design the upper level of Town Hall for revenue collection. You also have letters to Goffstown, Grassmere Village Water Precincts regarding the Municipal Budget Act, and a follow-up letter regarding zip code to the United States Postal Service. Steve Forte, who is the vice, I forget his title, Northeast Region.
Do we have a motion to
So
accept it?
moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Oh, one more, I'm sorry. Can you include this one in too? You have a corrective tax warrant. Last week's tax warrant had the year 2010 instead of 2011.
And nobody caught it?
Nobody caught it.
Okay.
The binder said 2011 on it.
Yeah, but the actual one you signed up in the section
Oh,
said
okay.
2010,
Okay, that's
so it's
why,
just a
that's
corrective.
why it slipped through.
I,
Okay,
I would concur with that amendment to the original.
Yeah.
okay. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you. You have assessor recommendations for 2011 tax year abatements.
I make a motion that you waive the reading of these.
Reading of them, thank you.
So many.
And also an intent to cut on map 11, lot 14.
Motion to accept the assessor's recommendations.
Any discussion? Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second that. on
Okay,
the
any,
tax year
any
abatement.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining? It's unanimous.
Thank you. Used vehicle bid results. On October 25th, the town opened bids from 6 vendors for the 2005 and 2006 Crown Vics. Enclosed in your spreadsheet at tab 6A is a spreadsheet from DPW listing the vendors' names and bids, which we'll include in the minutes. Bids, the high bids were, well, first of all, the bids range for the 2006 from $666.99 to $2,678, and for 2005 Crown Vic from $777.99 to $1,678. High bidder for each was Grace Quality Used Cars. And they recommend, obviously, the high bid on this.
Right. Do we have a
Motion to authorize the sale of the 2005 Crown Vic for $1,678 and a 2006 Crown Vic for $2,678 to Grace Quality Used Cars.
Would you add to that motion to authorize the chairman to sign the titles?
And authorize the chairman to sign the titles.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion?
I'm just a little nervous on this one,
Why?
because I used to attend auto auctions and, for work, and I always got nervous when they seem like they're, like, out of whack. And, like, if you look at these bids, and it's public record, I mean,
Yep.
$874, $666, $1,500, $1,800, $1,200, and then almost $2,700.
Right.
Just seems like,
But this is not the first time that we've had this.
Okay.
A lot of these, they do them all over, they
I
send
just
them all
thought-
over. Some of them are just, they lowball, they're basically
I-
fishing.
yeah, no, and I
What
know.
have you found?
What?
What have you found in some, like,
Well, in
what's the
my,
reason for
in
some
my
of these?
dealings, there were, fraudulent reasons why people were bidding on things for VINs but again, there was different, there were different cars, it wasn't a Crown Vic, but,
Yeah.
these were different vehicles where they would spend a lot of money on them, because they would take the VIN, and they would use it, and they'd swap a VIN. And you'd say, how come that car, that Honda Accord went for so much money? Because they're looking to steal cars. And
What you're saying is they're buying it for the VIN
they're
number.
buying it for the VIN.
For the VIN.
And, I mean, I highly doubt that's the case here, because it's a Crown Vic, for crying out loud, but it just seems, and again, I'm not accusing, I mean, I don't know these people, but it just seemed really peculiar that, it was almost, it was really high for those cars, and
But
They
it's-
really wanted them.
I know, I guess they want them, so
Yeah,
hopefully they won't be used for,
a
bad
lot-
purposes.
But, some of these, depends on where they have their markets and what market that they have and what they're paying.
No, I understand, I
A
just.
lot of these cars are shipped out of the country, because there's a high demand for them in other parts of the world.
So, it just jumped off it, usually when you see them that are like that high.
Oh, no, I understand what you're saying, but ever since we started putting them out to
Yeah,
bid, we've had.
no, I know, I've seen a couple
I
that
mean, we've
were
had some
real-
that, like, we got 874 and 666. I mean, we've had them down for
It just,
$400,
it seems strange that, and
375.
right, like we've had some fire apparatus that went for less than this. I mean, the scrap metal probably was worth more, but.
When you Google this company, they specialize in former police and government vehicles at
Okay, so
wholesale
maybe,
price.
Yeah,
so
they
maybe
have the
that's
market.
it.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, they have the market.
They
And
know
maybe
where
they're
to go to
selling them
market.
to, third world countries or something.
Well, sometimes they're buying
We
the
have
cars for
found
parts.
them in
too.
other parts of the world,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Yeah, the bus.
You're right, the bus in Haiti, so, okay.
Yeah,
I
hey, the
stand-
people in
I
Haiti gotta
stand
get
corrected,
to
so-
where they're going too,
Thank you for your high bid.
You wanna see what they sell them for?
Yeah. Oh, they get big bucks for them.
Yeah, I
There's a
guess
high
they are.
demand
They
for
are.
'em.
Oh, 2006 Crown Vic, $7,000.
Wow,
They have the market.
good for them. Okay.
Good information, sir.
It's not unusual. You go into an auction and everybody in there doesn't wanna go over X amount of dollars. You got a guy come in and the guy's got his hand up, doesn't put it down, and he buys it, pays a high price, and everybody looks, thinks the guy's nuts, but the guy turns around and makes 100% profit.
Maybe we should try to sell these on a website. Oh, my goodness.
Well, they probably go through them, I
Yeah,
would
they
imagine.
probably rehab 'em or
Yeah.
something.
Well, and they got the parts, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're right. That's
You know,
probably it, yeah.
they're buying cars for parts.
Yeah.
Okay, so, next item.
Oh, we have
With
to
the-
vote.
Motion
with
and
the
a
vote.
second.
Oh, okay, that's right, there is a motion and a second, and any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, 400.
Okay.
Steve Fournier is out of the room.
Yeah, take a call, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
He's still in the building, though,
We
Checking
can-
on his
we can
power.
grab him.
yeah.
Okay, in response to a inquiry about reimbursement by
that was me.
police. Yep, $10 a month for employer-provided cell phones. The reason the chief gave me was that it would, he was told at one time it would be a taxable benefit, and it was at one time, but it no longer is. We reviewed IRS regulations, and cell phones haven't been a taxable fringe benefits since 2009. So the chief is just going to proceed like all the other departments.
I don't understand that. Could you explain that? I mean, I understand it's employer-provided cell phones,
Yes.
and it was interpreted that it would be a taxable.
benefit.
So we were providing an additional $10 per month?
No,
No,
they
they
were
paid
paying.
us.
They were paying us?
Yeah.
Thank you, okay.
Yes.
Because I see reimbursement by
Yeah, they were
police.
paying the town $10 a month.
So it was by police employees?
Yes.
Right, okay, I took
Like
this as
2 or 3 of them.
reimbursement by
It was like
department.
it was command staff.
Right.
Understood,
Yeah.
okay.
So it was
So-
costing more, in my opinion, it was costing more to process their checks than it was worth.
I understand, thank you.
We had, at one time, there were a lot of these things that came up, these regulations came down, and we went through them, and, so there was a lot of scrutiny at that time.
And that's just an FYI,
Yes, it is.
thank you.
Right.
Okay, in your packet, you have the 2012 health and dental insurance rates and the corresponding cafeteria rates, which is the amount the employer pays towards those plans. So we need a motion for the board to approve the 2012 cafeteria rates, which are based on the confirmed health and dental insurance rates from the provider. That's at 6C. These are the numbers that were also used in the budget.
Okay. Okay.
I had a question,
Okay.
but I don't know if it has to do with our contract negotiations.
Any contracts that are ratified at the March 2012 meeting, though, that will take effect and the rates will change
That was my
thereafter.
question. That was this
So
one
you
here.
start, yeah, so you start the year
But
with the
not
current,
not this one.
and it goes to this one after town meeting if it's voted in.
That's what I wanted to know.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, any other questions?
I mean, I have questions, but after the vote.
Okay, we'll need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we proceed with the cafeteria rates as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Any other question?
Yeah, I think, when you look at the numbers, and again, these numbers are not different than in a lot of, I mean, they're large. I mean, when you look at the cost of plans, I think it's just something that we have to, again, once again, revisit this and revisit the plans. We just can't keep sustaining, 10% growth and saying this is okay. And I think we have to keep looking at the plans themselves, what's being offered, the contributions from the employee continuously. And if we're gonna do this in a manner in which we're gonna, keep this health insurance manageable, the cost for not only employee, but also the community who's paying the lion's share of the bill, we need to have more conversation, more dialogue about what should the employee contribute, what should the employer contribute, because I still think that this is a little on the high end in terms of what the employer is contributing. In most cases, it's 90-10. But by the same token, I think that it would be much better to make slight, modest adjustments over a period of time than all of a sudden just say, one fell swoop, we're changing the contribution 10% or something, and asking an employee to absorb that. I think I don't know what everyone else feels, my personal opinion is that, we need to probably get down to the 85 to 80% of employer payment and 15 to 20% of the employee paying. We're at 10 right now. I'm just not in favor of doing that in one fell swoop.
Right.
I would prefer to see that happen over a period of years where it's 1 or 2% a year to get to that point, because it doesn't take such a big hit out of someone's pay or their take-home pay. But you only do that by starting that process, and if we don't eventually start that process, and one of our difficulties is that we have non-union folks, and then we have our ones where we negotiate. But I think that's something that we're going to have to really think about long and hard, is that we have to look at two things: the plans that we offer, and also the contributions that the employee makes.
The only thing, though, we have to be careful on this discussion, because when you get into this discussion, we can get into a little bit on negotiations.
Yeah, I know, I understand.
But one thing that I want to make clear, especially for the viewing audience, is in light of what you said, you know, making the steps, we have been making the steps. And unfortunately, the things that I would like to be able to say that the viewing public could understand what we're doing is going to delve into the area of negotiations. So I can't say what I would like to say for them to know, but just that I want to make clear that we have been doing that, and without
changed?
having a discussion in non-public regarding exactly what you're talking about at this point, I think it's difficult for us to have that conversation. And it's not that we haven't been doing anything, and I understand, and I think everybody sitting here agrees, but we have been working on that. But unfortunately, I think that we can't really have that discussion publicly at this point.
I'm good.
Okay. So with that, this has been voted on, and the next item then, Sue, is?
RFQ for the CMAC project number 20246. This is for the intersections of Pleasant and Main and the intersection of Main High and Elm Street. And basically need a motion to approve and authorize advertising upon the approval of New Hampshire DOT.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes, seconded.
Discussion?
This is a request for qualifications to be, it'll be released to the State Highway Department for their review. And if they concur with it, then it'll come back to be released.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you. And the last item I have for tonight is you have a warrant that arrived today for the betterment assessment for the Lynchville-Danis Park Water Project.
Okay, so that wasn't in here.
It's in the consensus folder.
On the bottom
In the
of the
signature folder.
Signature
That's what I'm saying, it's in the signature folder, but we didn't have that in.
No, you didn't have it, it arrived today.
Okay. All right,
So
and
I
I
need a
haven't seen
motion
the
to approve
signature
it.
folder.
I'll
so-
make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Abstain.
Oh, abstain, one abstention.
And trick or treat, it was recommended by the chief that we hold that next Sunday from 5 to 7. He's looking for the approval of the board on that.
Okay.
Manchester's doing it at the same time.
Motion.
Same time as Manchester?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to approve the trick-or-treat hours 5 to 7 next Sunday night.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Nick. Any discussion? Just one thing to remind everybody
it
that daylight savings starts that Sunday. So the clocks will be turned back, so it will be dark at 5 o'clock, just so that everybody's aware.
We usually do it from 6
To
to
8.
8, so it
Okay.
kind of
It's an hour
jives
earlier,
with that.
right?
so.
Well, yeah, and I think, though, the fact that it's on, you know, being on a Sunday, 5 to 7, unfortunately, it's not Halloween, but it's beyond forces that are beyond our control that,
Every day can be Halloween if you want it to be.
well, sometimes it could be.
And I've heard that Captain America will be out next Sunday.
Okay. Sounds
Maybe it
good.
will look more like Halloween next Sunday.
That's it.
Nick, it could be Fire Marshal Bob or something.
Okay, we're gonna have Smokey the Bear too.
I
And
love that-
and
that
Frost,
skit.
see,
Oh.
today Frosty would have been
Frosty
perfect.
would have been on today, that's right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for hours of trick or treating to be next Sunday, and the date of that is November 6th, from 5 to 7.
Yes.
And that's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous? Okay, Scott.
I just wanted to, we could have a pretty good traffic situation over the weekend. So a few people might know, November 5th, there is a high school football game, and since the team has been doing incredibly well, there's been a lot of people going to these games. For the night game, there was 1,300 people who went. So there's a strong likelihood that there will be a lot of folks there. The other thing is it's the Lions Club Craft Fair at the same weekend.
Right.
So for those who are looking about going to the football game or going to the craft fair, just be patient. You may have to park in different places, whether it be Barnard Park or Parks and Rec parking lot and walk. So just be patient, and there probably will be some traffic, I would say, from 1 to 4.
Where's the craft fair?
Craft fair will be, it's in Goffstown High School
Will
gym.
be at the high school gym.
And then the football game is in the backfield.
back.
So I just anticipate some delays, and as I'm pretty sure that'll happen. And then craft fair is again on Sunday, and then after that it'll be trick-or-treating, so,
Right. It'll be an eventful weekend,
yeah.
as long as the weather is nice.
If the parking is too full at the high school, they're welcome to come to the Park and Rec building where we have a skate and ski sale.
Right. So. And since we are doing public announcements, the library is doing Once Upon a Pie, I think November 13th, which is a Saturday. Catherine usually bakes for that.
I baked yesterday and tried a pie.
And,
We ate it in the dark and it was delicious.
So,
There are a
I have
number,
already submitted my entry.
I'm
there are a
gonna-
number of fairs and craft events on the 5th.
I'm gonna try my hand this year at the pie contest, try to bake something myself. Some
A
humble
humble pie?
pie, yes.
Humble
I
pie?
knew you were gonna say that. I knew it.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, anything else, Sue?
That's all I had for public.
Okay, then the next item that we're gonna have is the selectmen's discussion, new business, old business, reports, budget committee.
Budget Committee met last week. We had 2 sessions, and it was a Q&A with some departments, library, administration, but that was only got half of that done. And that was on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, it was the police department. It was supposed to be Parks and Rec, but unfortunately Rick couldn't attend, so
Right.
that'll get pushed to this week.
Did they complete police?
They did.
Oh.
Yeah, they did. So that was it. It was, Thursday's meeting went relatively quickly. There, again, we're in that question and answer phase right now. And that'll probably continue for a little bit this week. And then I'm thinking next week is when they'll start doing some deliberations. I already spoke with Steve, as I'm gonna be out of town, definitely a week from this Tuesday. I'm not sure if I'll be back by Thursday, but Steve will cover for me.
Okay.
I don't think
Did you
they're
know
meeting
that?
on the 10th.
Oh, okay.
They're not?
You had that look on
I
your face.
enjoy, I enjoy going to budget
But I wanna
committee.
You
verify.
just had that look on your faces.
No, I enjoy going, I'm fine with that.
He loves it.
Okay, any questions? Conservation Commission?
Conservation met on the 28th. We had a public discussion with Jack Munn and James Cuffer of Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. And they discussed the watershed land conservation plan and the updated 2010 Piscataquag River Management Plan. And they were looking for the Conservation Commission to support the plan. There'll be an additional meeting with them on November 30th, and the commission will further discuss those plans and their actions. David Neiman briefed the commission on the Roberts Farm Open Space project, and wanted to announce to the commission that upon the recommendation of, I believe, the town administrator, they applied for and received the Moose Plate Grant.
What does that mean?
There's a grant for monies, I believe.
Oh, from the sale of the moose
From
plates?
this, yeah, there's a percentage that goes
Okay.
to, at the time, David had mentioned that you had spoken to, or somebody from administration had spoken to them about applying for
recall
that
that.
grant.
Okay.
So I don't know what the amount is, but they did receive word that they were approved for it. And the meeting in November, November 30th, or the next meeting will be November 30th instead of November 23rd because of Thanksgiving.
Right.
So it's been moved to November 30th.
Just a question, when Sue was doing the administration portion of the budget, at the Budget Committee, we did talk about that GIS flyover, and was there any discussion at Conservation about the GIS and having up-to-date information? I know that some members have talked about that it's a nice tool to have for when, whether that be wetlands, situations, or, like we had
The
that one
contours, they're very interested
Well,
in the
it's
contours.
well, it's contours, but it's also, they've come here for wetlands things. They've come
Right.
before us for junkyards and people, those types
Right.
of things where the environment is being, potentially compromised. And it would, if it's something that they would endorse, I think it would be helpful, whether it be minimally a letter, but hopefully maybe if they came to a budget committee meeting and just said, hey, we endorse this, it's been very helpful to us, that would help. As we're trying to, I think the business case has been made that this GIS flyover touches like 4, 5, 6 different departments.
Okay, so you're looking at some type of endorsement from?
Endorsement, yeah, would be helpful.
Okay.
If they want to, obviously.
Anything else, Nick?
That was it.
Any other questions of Nick? Okay, planning board did meet last week, and, they appointed, Sue Duhamel as an alternate member, and I did swear her in, that evening. Also, the board approved a sign permit, for 2 signs for Comics Plus at 3 Church Street, in the Village District, and, the only condition was that the, lettering, they had some lettering on the bottom, 1.5 inches needed to be, increased to 2 per the requirements of the sign ordinance. Also, they approved a conditional use permit for, LED sign at the the Wave Station is going to a Sunoco station, and a new sign will have the, LED, changers for the, prices, and that was approved, so long as, with a maximum of 1 change in a 24-hour period, with that. Also,
Silly question.
Yeah, what,
Like, why does that matter?
I
If the price of gas goes from, and I've heard that they change it quite frequently.
it depends.
But why would it matter if the sign
Well,
is the sign?
Well, it goes back to the issue when we had a legal issue with the town on on one of them that was, in town. And it got into the changing of items on there and the zoning. I believe it's in there, the amount that you can change. You can't regulate the content, but you can regulate the rate of change. In other words, you can regulate whether or not the message changes, let's say every 5 seconds, 15 seconds. That's something that is regulatable, so.
The reason being, if you don't regulate the change, you end up with signs very similar to some you may see on some commercialized strips where they're very bright, they change frequently.
And they have patterns,
They have
they can have
patterns, so the-
fireworks.
And it
A lot of
becomes-
communities
It becomes
are-
a
Safety issue.
distraction if you're
Exactly.
driving.
So to avoid that distraction, by limiting how often the sign can change, you limit the person's desire to have
But
patterns and pictures and.
I understand Scott's
Yeah.
issue. I mean, I have the same issue with that because it sounds to me as though the planning board is regulating,
Business.
how much they can change. We're regulating the price of gas for a 24-hour period,
Right, and that
so it
doesn't-
can't change. The only thing I could say at that point, if it becomes an issue, it would seem to me that the owners of these signs and these establishments would just come back to the planning board, with the case that you have this requirement, but the prices is changing so much that we have to be able to do it within that time
Couldn't they just
period.
exempt prices,
Well,
price changes?
It should be, but I'm the one who made the motion with the condition because I was comfortable what I was gonna be able to get through. With the prices, I don't feel, but, one of the questions that came up was the fact that this, sign was gonna have gasoline and diesel, and that there's no other sign that we approved that had diesel on it, so we're precedents, So I have to balance.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I have to balance, is the fact that it's got diesel on there and if I look at it and think that that the sign is a reasonable sign, I don't think that we should be telling them that they can only have the price of gasoline up there, they can't have the price of diesel when they sell diesel. Yes.
I had another question, a planning board question, and that was, with respect to signs. Is there anything coming down where they plan on looking at our ordinances or regulations for signs? And I say that because, you have some communities, we all know, like Bedford, where they're pretty strict in how things go, and then you see others where it's like it's a free-for-all. And one of the things that kind of concerns me is that depending upon what part of town you're in, if you're in the village, it seems like things are, for the most part, pretty good. And then if you look at certain, like, business owners, and I'll give you a good example, you have Liberty Press, beautiful sign. You have the Allstate, very pretty sign. Phil Tatro, the guest, very nice, and it looks, and it gives a very nice appearance, And then, you see some others where we still have that construction trailer sign that I have concerns with that, and I have yet to hear any, I understand that when there's political advertisement, that's free speech, et cetera, but that's the type of thing that I think makes the, what's the purpose for that? Is that, I don't get it. I think that's something that we have to take a look at. The same thing with these people who, if you have a truck where they put something on a trailer or on a truck, and it just,
Well,
kind of
where you-
circumvents, because there's no law for one that's on a truck, obviously.
Yeah, that's where you're getting to something that we
Right.
have, that we can't regulate.
Right,
Because
it's a motor vehicle, and I completely
if you
understand that.
tried to regulate that, that means every truck that come through
I completely-
Goffstown that had
no,
anything
I-
on the side
I
of it.
completely understand that. But the other one is a construction sign, and people think that this is they think that it's a
Either something from the
town-
state or
And the statute does say that you can't have a sign that thinks that, that it is used for
I
public
don't know,
safety or.
honestly, I don't know if that issue that you're talking about is actually an issue that is something that should be addressed through the zoning ordinance. I think if there's already a statute, that it would seem to me that that's something that is enforceable somewhere
Well,
else.
and the other thing too, like there's like a ton of like banners that go up and sandwich board signs, and it's just like, I mean, like some of these gas stations where, whether it be the,
Well,
you see, and it's just like, I don't know, like, why is it that some people seem to play by the rules, and other people are really stretching the rules, if there are rules, I don't even know, but it's just like, it seems to me that, we're working really hard to try to make to try to beautify the town, or to make it, a nice place to visit, and then you have it and it looks like it's a hodgepodge. And I think we want to help businesses, because I know it's been difficult, but some of them are very responsible, and they do a phenomenal job in making their business and their sign look wonderful. And others, it's just like, it's just like, it looks like crap. I don't know how else to say it. Doesn't look well. And it's a poor reflection on the community, and if there's a way for us to coach these people or help them, that's one thing. If not, if they're violating the ordinance, then that's what we should do. And if they're not violating the ordinance and we have the ability to tighten it up so it does look a little bit better, then so be it. But that's just that's a planning board issue. But as our liaison, I don't know if it's something that the
But-
planning board discusses.
But those things, some of those things that you're talking about go into enforcement of what's in it. I'm not saying that some things are legal, some things aren't on it, but some of that is enforcement on that. And I think that we all know that, we're kind of stretched a little bit on staff.
No, and I understand,
You have to
but
prioritize
But
what
as
you have
long
people doing.
as- Okay, one of them is, if it's an enforcement issue, I'm okay with that. But if it's, we really don't feel we can enforce it because our ordinance is vague, or there's a lot of loopholes in our ordinance, then that has to become something where the planning board tightens it up so that it can be enforced pretty good.
Well,
That's all I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying, and I think perhaps if you don't mind, that just for the discussion that we would need to have on that, I think, is to perhaps some of the specifics that you might have is perhaps if we just take a look at that and we'll see where they are outside of the meeting.
Yeah.
you know, on that, just to kind of, so we have a better understanding, to see what that is.
Sure.
Okay.
I just want to jump in on it
Sure.
just for here, I won't take long. And I do agree with Selectman Gross, especially when we're talking about the signage. You say, well, it went from a 1-inch to a 2-inch letter. You come through the village, it looks very professional. And I realize there's a thin line between a business promoting himself and getting that message out in its tough times. But you do, and I'll be honest, you go through Penarville, I've never seen so many signs. I mean, and it's on trucks, it's on reader boards, it's sandwiches, there's banners hanging. You would never see that in the village, is all I would tell you. In fact, you don't see it in the village.
See what, the 2-inch letters?
No.
The variety.
The variety of signage that's out there, in fact, there's so much coming at you. I would almost tell you it's starting to defeat itself. There's so much signage in
Well,
going through that area.
part of that too is the sign of the times, because businesses, you know, are struggling, and they're doing everything possible that they can to get another customer in. And signage is those types of signs, but as far as what you had mentioned about the size of the lettering in the ordinance is a certain size so that you can see it. So the only thing with that was that he had the 1.5-inch letters on the bottom, and he had no problem with the 2-inch because he realized what it was, and he thought it was.
You were missing my point there, was that here they're having a conversation regarding that, and one would just have to drive through one area, through the village area, and through the other, through Penarville, and you look at it and say, this is the conversation they're having with that. When you look at,
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
it
but
looks-
you
it looks
have
like-
to.
it looks like the circus is in town
Yeah,
down
but-
there.
but-
I mean,
That's my point.
I mean, no one
Time
would be
out.
talking to me about 1.5 inches versus 2
Time out.
down there.
Time out. The only thing the planning board can discuss is what's in front of them as an application.
I understand that.
That's it.
We understand that, and and all Selectman Gross is saying is that regarding how those rules and regulations or what those requirements are, there's a large disparity between the two areas, and maybe it's a zoning piece, or maybe it's just because they're not specific, maybe he's asking a question, is it specific enough, that's all.
Well, that's why I said I would get with him and find out
And I was just
some
wondering.
specifics.
I'll just go around this week, I'll take some pictures,
But
pictures will speak 1,000.
One other thing that you have to also take into account here, okay? A lot of these things that you're looking at are grandfathered, okay? It depends on when zoning is. If a person put their sign up that met the ordinance at one point, the ordinance gets changed the next time, somebody comes in for an application, they say, well, how come he's got the sign? His is grandfathered.
Mr. Chair, it's not so much the existing signs, it's just the banners and the flaggies and I mean, and if you go to many, you see some of these things, it's like, it looks like hell. But yet, then you have other people who play by the rules, and I'm sure their businesses struggle, but they play by the rules, so.
I understand what you're saying, and that's why I
Yeah.
said, let's see what some of the specifics that you have, and we can research them and find out if it's an enforcement issue, if it's something that's grandfathered, if it's something that does have an approval, or
Are there different regulations in the village overlay district as opposed to?
you have certain, but I couldn't specifically tell you what they are if it came to a banner. Couldn't tell you if it's a business that's going in and they're having a temporary sign, does the banner come under the temporary sign? So that's why I'm saying there are several different issues.
For a year.
There are different issues, okay? So I don't think
Let's look at our-
Selectmen's meeting is the place to
Yeah.
have that discussion, okay?
Light agenda, so I brought it up.
Right, I know.
No trick-or-treating.
I know.
There's no
You're
trick-or-treating.
enjoying,
There was
you're
no-
enjoying the heat here. You
There was
don't
no-
wanna go home where it's dark and there's no heat.
That is correct.
Gotta stretch this thing out, another 4 hours.
Give him his wig.
Maybe the power will be on by then.
No, that ain't happening.
We're not staying that long.
Okay, and the other thing was, there was a discussion on the school impact fee methodology update, and there was a public hearing on that, and Ray Labor was there on behalf of the school administration. And additional time was needed, and it's anticipated that Ray Labor will have some direct discussion with the Southern New Hampshire Planning update on that to come back at a future time. It was actually continued to the December 8th meeting. And then there was the groundwater protection plan. That was a proposal to amend the zoning, or not the zone, the master plan, for inclusion into the master plan as a chapter. And that document was quite thick. I would say that document's probably close to 3/8 of an inch thick on it. There was quite a lot of information in there. And there was quite a bit of discussion on that as to whether or not it should be included into the master plan, the type of information in there versus what is currently in the master plan as far as, vision for the town along with zoning. So it was decided to accept the plan as an official reference document that the town can use. Along that, there's other things that if you included that document into the master plan, then should be the emergency management plan be included into the master plan and other plans that we have. And, my concern was you'd have a master plan that looked this thick when you were done, and then somebody that came in and said, gee, could I see the master plan? And you hand them 3 books, that are, each one's 4 inches thick, say, forget it, on it. So that's the way it was left with that, but it could be reviewed at a further down the road. And then there was the transportation impact fee updated study, and the board voted to adopt the methodology presented, but not to adopt the proposed fees. They voted to keep the current fees due to the economy with that.
So
And that was the
how
plan.
do you accept the methodology but not the fees that went along with it?
Kind of what we did, didn't we?
No.
Yes, we wanted to.
tweaked it.
We wanted to implement the fees slowly, and
Slowly,
that
yeah.
was frowned upon.
Well,
But they got to the same thing by eliminating some of the projects.
Got it
They the
down.
same- But now these are they're gonna remain stagnant for the next 5 years?
That's a good
unless the
question.
board wants to address it, my concern about that is that these are things that the board votes on, and the board doesn't think about them, the planning board doesn't think about them until it comes up, because it's past due, the 5 years has gone by. There was quite a bit of discussion on it, and my whole point was, we come into the time of the year where we start dealing with zoning changes. We have to have public hearings. We have our site regs that we make changes to. We get to busy time, and all of a sudden, if we're told that we're gonna have to review impact fees to consider increasing them perhaps, then we have to go through a whole process because there's public hearings and there's a whole process, and that was what.
I think maybe what Sue is alluding to is that if something is not put on, tabled for next year per se, so fine, this year, we're not gonna make any changes, but, if I'm not mistaken, Selectman Pierce's proposal was to stagger this thing over 5 years, so that once you adopted that, no change this year, and then it's stacked, so that you're just taking one vote and you recognize that it's gonna
Well-
progressively get to the point where that recommendation was. What concerns me here is that you took a vote, and who knows, will it come up next year, 2 years from now? And if it doesn't, then it's gonna be no increase over the next 5 years, which is
No,
not what we favored.
I agree with you. I was in favor, and I was trying to take the board's position, the selectmen's position with that, where not to have the impact fees for the commercial, but to have them for the residential, to try to slow down the residential. I said because we want to increase the ratio between commercial and residential. And there appears to be no support. I even requested that the planning board have a discussion about commercial and industrial versus the residential, and where we want to go. Do we want to restrict? Do we want to slow the growth down on it? And the comment that was made that I was one person that wanted it, and there was no indication that the planning board wanted to have that discussion. So I guess What I'm trying to say is I feel that I was talking on deaf ears, to try to slow it down. And at one point, there was almost a motion for no impact fees made, which it didn't go forward, but yes.
I'd like to make a recommendation that in the future, before we embark on paying a agency to do a study for us, to see if there's any indication that someone wants something reviewed, because if the decision makers don't want to take the advice of a study, then why are we paying for these studies?
Well, I understand what you're saying, because there were a lot of comments that were made about impact fees, that all impact fees are another form of tax. And, as Jack Munn from Southern New Hampshire had been here over the period of time, and we've had this discussion about impact fees, I thought it was pretty clear what they were, because part of the explanation that we were having, and I tried to summarize up for him one time to the board, and it seemed to be acceptable, nobody had a problem with it at that point in time, was how impact fees are basically, when a house is built, that house generates so much traffic, that was trips, through intersections, across bridges, and when those items, that infrastructure is built, that infrastructure is built and projected by the amount of trips and the amount of use that it's gonna get for its lifespan. So when you increase and you have growth, items that come in that were not part of the calculation, that the impact fees are part of the way to recoup that for the extra wear on it and reducing the life expectancy on that for the overall benefit of the community. Like I say, I felt like I was talking on deaf ears, because the question came up was, how do I explain to my neighbor that builds a house up the street that impact fees are gonna be on him for the roundabout down on Wallace Road, or the one that's gonna be built? Why are we even having $150,000 from that developer going into that thing? And when you try to explain is that you have an intersection there, that's gonna have a direct impact by how many traffic trips go through that intersection, and that's what it's based on. Quite frankly, having that discussion with the planning board, who many years ago put into a zoning amendment that was voted on by the voters to have impact fees, I just find myself in an unusual situation.
Did you not have a full board?
No, we did not have a full board. No, and that was another thing too, because everything else that we talked about, they wanted to wait till we have a full board. But then when it came up to that issue, I requested that we wait till I have a full board. But that discussion, that request didn't follow.
Didn't we decide not to adopt a specific transportation impact fee because we couldn't exclude commercial? And
Well, that's when we had to change.
And our advice was that we could go forward with just developer offsetting costs, and that's what we were.
You were gonna keep your same methodology
Right.
of residential impact fee only for transportation.
Right. When that came up, Brian had brought that up. There was no, that he gave a good explanation of that. But it was just the whole concept. Because I had made a motion to accept it, and it didn't pass. And then there was a motion to accept it with the current rates, accept the methodology with the current fees.
Right, but that's what I thought. I thought the current fees were not for transportation per se. I thought we relied on a per-site determination by the planning board of what.
You're talking about offset improvement fees.
Right. But
That's for commercial.
That's for commercial, yeah.
That was for the commercial. But the updated plan that was in front of it there was gonna be no increase, there was no proposed increase in the commercial, because we weren't gonna do it for commercial, we were gonna do the off-site improvement fees, but
I
there
thought they were
was.
lumped together.
There was an increase
For
recommended
re-
for the
for the
residential.
residential.
Yes.
which did not go through.
Right.
And my whole point was, don't we want to slow down the residential? And I was told,
So our residential impact fees are much lower than neighboring communities.
and I guess my concern is if that's the way the vote went on that, what's going to happen when we have the school impact fees? What's going to happen with Parks and Rec impact fees?
Did they realize, I mean, you said taxation, that there's another tax.
Well,
It's
some-
to keep our taxes down. Because the developer is paying
Well-
the fee.
We understand.
I understand, but they comment was that it was a tax on the developer that's passed on to the purchaser. The only thing that, you know, I didn't,
true.
I didn't want to get into the whole thing, but if you don't have impact fees, and you do all of this stuff, okay, and you affect the infrastructure and you affect how the community operates, number one, it's gonna affect our bond, it'll have an impact on our bonding capacity. Once you start going down that road, it also has an impact on our property values, okay? And that was part of my whole point of what makes, you know, but, read the minutes,
All right, thank you.
I look forward to reading the minutes.
okay? With that, is there any other public business?
Now, I don't know, we had there was one
One or
non-public
two
in our
non-public.
packet. Okay, but the one, I didn't have a problem with it, I would just,
B?
yeah, it was
Hiring?
the hiring one.
Motion to accept the fire chief's request to make a conditional offer of employment for a call firefighter.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That's unanimous. So we have one non-public, one public issue?
Yes.
Okay, so we need a,
Motion to enter non-public session.
okay, but just wait, we have no more public business, except possibly a public vote on the outcome of this, but I don't anticipate this is anything on that, so that should be the end of, I would anticipate, just being into the non-public, briefly, and then we're gonna adjourn from that. Okay, just so that everybody's aware, so we have a motion for non-public?
Under RSA 91A 3, 2E, legal.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yeah, and the vote was unanimous. Okay, we're in non-public session.